Okay, hello and welcome everyone. I'm Luminara Serdar, and in case you are encountering me for the first time and you're not sure who I am, I know probably some of you have been getting emails from me for probably years, I don't know. And what I want to say is that I've been helping kids on the spectrum. I've been in the healing world for probably about 15 years and helping kids on the spectrum for about 10 years. I've put on 4 online autism summits called the Autism Recovery Summit, and I have one-on-one clients. I also do group NMT healing sessions. That's neuromodulation technique. So when I have my one-on-one clients, I do a combination of nutrition and detoxification and then energy work, which is the neuromodulation. And I also do groups with that. I've been doing that for a couple of years, and I have another one coming up in April. So if you're interested in that, just look in your email. I'll be sending information about that. And here's what I've discovered over time. And I think I should say for the recording, those people who are watching, I forgot to say the title of what I'll be talking about. So this webinar is focused on tantrums, stims, and anxiety, and which are pretty common with some of our kids. And it is February 19th, 2021. So what I've discovered in this amount of time with working one-on-one with people, working in groups, talking to hundreds and hundreds of parents, interviewing over 80 professionals, experts in the field, and also some parents, going to conferences and trainings. So this is an amalgamation of 10 years of this. And what I've come to discover is that these behaviors that we're talking about, the tantrums, the stimming, the anxiety, and a whole host of other types of behaviors, they have a root cause, and the root tends to be in a toxicity in the body. So if these toxins weren't in the body, everything would be functioning fine. And we're all exposed to toxins in so many different ways. And what I see is generationally, maybe our great-grandparents were sort of genetically more hardy, I guess you could say, and then they're exposed to something, and then their genetics change, and then the next generation genetics change, and the next generation genetics change. And what we're seeing as a consequence of that is a lot of these kids who are on the spectrum, they don't have really good detoxification capability, and their genes have changed. So they're already kind of coming into the world with a little bit of a deficit, and then they're exposed to all these things. And I think there's a lot of other things changing in the world. So, and I won't go into all of that, but when I say there's toxins, imagine there's gears turning, right? Cogs and wheels that interact and turn with each other. And when there's something in the way, a piece of debris, or what we call the wrench in the gears, those gears don't turn so well. So this is what I see happening in the body. And what I've come to discover is that if we can clean out the toxins, things will work better. And timing is a big issue of that. The younger, the better, because I think what happens with our kids, our brains are so brilliant. We as humans are amazingly adaptive and brilliant. And what happens is these kids, we all do, but I'll speak specifically with kids on the spectrum, we figure out ways around the mess that's going on in the brain. So if we have some toxicity in the brain, and maybe I'm just going to go back a step. If there's toxicity in the brain, there's typically inflammation. Our cells could be in what Robert Navio describes as cell danger response. So it means there's either consistent toxins there, or infection, or some reason why there's inflammation that's consistent, and the cells go into danger mode versus anabolic building, daily function mode. So the cells are at a fight or flight in the cell level and not relaxed. And what can happen is, even if the toxicity or whatever disrupts that, goes away, the cells can be kind of entrained or in this fight or flight mode consistently. Okay, so we have the toxins in the brain, we can have inflammation, and then what happens? Disruption in development. So when I interviewed Dr. Robert Melillo a couple of years ago for one of my summits, what I can't remember the name of his book, sorry, but he has the brain balance system. And what he says is there's development of certain areas of the brain at certain times. So let's say this part in the right side of the brain is developing at age 3 months, for example. And if there's something in the way, a toxin, an infection, maybe a child had an ear infection and we gave antibiotics, and there's just some kind of disruption, that part of the brain misses its development. And then 3 months later, something over here starts developing. So we get these uneven distributions of development of the brain. And what the brain balance system is all about is building those areas of the brain that haven't fully developed. So, you know, what we're talking about with these behaviors, there's a lot of neurological stuff going on. So the brain can get stuck in a stage of development. And like, I think one of the questions someone emailed me was about vocal stims. And I think we have these stages of development and we can get stuck in a stage of development and we see it as echolalia or, you know, repeating stimming. So, and there's other reasons for that too. I'm just saying that can be one cause. So our brain, as brilliant as it is, it finds a way around that, right? It builds these neural networks. And in some cases, the stimming is a self-regulation because we've got these sensory processing or these other brain processing issues. And the brain brilliantly finds a way around that, what we call a tangle in the brain, right? It's these neurons that just, they're kind of a glob. I mean, I'm using, you know, hopefully language you can understand, not scientific, but we kind of have this glob of neurons that is, you know, kind of almost like a cyst or something, can just get sequestered off, and then the brain finds a workaround. So I think that's a lot of what's going on. But what I want to do is, I also wanted to tell you what I have coming up. I found over this period of time working with people that there's one key thing that a lot of practitioners are missing. And I've been honing in on that and seeing amazing results. So this goes back to the idea that our brains are disrupted from toxins and inflammation. So if we are able to get those toxins out and get the inflammation to calm down, we can get the brain to change and develop and grow and mature. I think the older the child, the more our neural networks, the pathways are set, if you want to say that, because it's kind of like a habit, right? If we do the same thing, or maybe our morning routine, it becomes a habit. We're very familiar with that, and it's harder to change. So I feel like neurologically, it's a little bit harder to change the older kids because they've figured out their workaround and they're pretty happy with it. So sometimes going in and taking those toxins out, it's a little bit more of an uphill climb for those older kids because we're really shifting how they've been comfortable in their brain neurology and how they've been comfortable in their behaviors. It's not impossible. We can all shift from habits. You know, we can all take new actions. Sometimes it's just a matter of having the motivation and the persistence to do it. So that's what I want to say about older kids and neurology. So this key that a lot of practitioners are missing is called drainage, and maybe you've heard me speak on that before. Drainage is exactly what it sounds like. It's draining the body. So if you have a hair clog in your sink or your bathtub and the water's not draining, you have a clog somewhere in your pipes and you need to open that up so that the bathtub water can drain out. It's similar in our bodies. If the kids are constipated and not pooping, or pooping but still have constipation, meaning there's some impaction of fecal matter, or their little hard rabbit pellets that they're pooping out, that's constipation. They're really not getting rid of things. So that's one thing. If you get your child pooping more regularly and the right kind of poop, the really full elimination happening, that's opening up drainage. The next step up of, like, if you look at drainage as a funnel and the colon and the constipation, the poop is down here, the next level up is the liver It does most of our detoxification, and it's pretty overloaded. And everybody I see, look, I'm healthy and my liver's overloaded. We're just exposed to things consistently and constantly. And these kids have a hard time detoxing because their systems are a little bit maybe at 80% or 60% functioning for detox. So we want to open up that liver, and there's ways to do that. And then if the liver's overwhelmed, the toxins go to the kidney. So if some of you maybe have seen your kids have frequent urination, frequent thirst, bedwetting, those kinds of things, it might be a sign of what we call P-tox, where the toxins are going out through the urine instead of where they should be going, where the bulk of everything should be going out is through the digestive tract. So we work on liver and kidneys to open those up. They're considered part of drainage. And beyond that, up further on that funnel, further level up, is our lymphatic system, which it takes the toxic waste from our cells, and that's like the sewer system of our body. It's like this, similar to the sewer, to the pipes in your house. It takes that all that waste, and we always are producing waste in our cells. It takes that waste out of the cells and down. It eventually dumps into the blood in the heart area, and that all goes to the kidney to get processed. So I know I'm repeating myself. I've talked about this before, but sometimes repetition is the best teacher. So if you've heard this before, maybe you're getting it. You're like, oh yeah, I know what she's going to say. So anyway, and if you haven't heard it before, then it's really key. What I find a lot is our kids, the kids I work with, their lymph is really congested because their cells are congested, because that space between the cells and the lymph, it's called the extracellular matrix, that's really congested. And then what happens further up the drainage funnels are the cells in the brain, right? So this is the last level that actually dumps out of the body. So if the lymph, let's say in the neck here, isn't open, actually I don't think I need these. I realized if the lymph in the neck, if the lymph vessels are not open, so you have like the vessel is the size of a coffee stirrer straw versus the size of a smoothie straw, then your brain's not going to be draining very effectively. And that happens during sleep. And I know some kids on the spectrum are not good sleepers. So sleep is very important as well. And when we don't drain that stuff out, then we have more neurological things. So there's a connection and everything. There's a holistic view. And what I've been focusing on is really getting these drainage pathways open. And there's a way to do that, that I will be actually teaching. I'll be having an online course, or live course, and I'll be having an introductory webinar for that on March 19th. So this same time, 10:30 Pacific on March 19th. I'm prepping everything for that so that I can tell you guys how to do this and what to use for this, and give you the protocol that I use. And then I'll have, after that, that's just the introduction. I can't do everything like in an hour. It's really too much information. So I will be having a course on that, and then we'll walk through all the steps of it together. So that's coming up. And I think those are the key things I wanted to say, just about my perspective and how I see autism and how I help kids. Now, I'm not discounting any of the therapies. I think occupational therapy is huge, speech therapy is huge. Like, people make really big gains on that. And I think it's very important because we still need to train the brain, in someone who doesn't have all this toxicity in their brain. Right from birth, we can see this, what's quote unquote normal development with crawling and walking and speech and doing all of the things a baby to a toddler does. Those build neural networks, those integrate reflexes. And so some of our kids are missing that. And I feel like those are definitely important steps to take. Clearing the toxins out will go a huge way towards helping, but it's not everything. And also diet is huge. Kids who are eating, I can't tell you how many kids I hear are eating chicken nuggets and French fries And those are the main things, are potatoes and pasta and macaroni and cheese. I'm hearing less of the cheese and gluten because people are really catching on with the gluten-free, dairy-free diets. But those are huge, you know, when you've got a disrupted gut and you're eating food that's basically calorie rich but not nutrient rich. That's really challenging. So that has to be addressed as well. I mean, there's more to it. It's a complex situation. And I wanted to say to the people who can't make it, who are listening to the recording, I got some excellent questions by email. I got several questions that I'll go over. And that prompted me to have some more ideas about what to tell you guys about the tantrums and stimming and anxiety. So I'm just going to say a few things. Blood sugar issues. So, you know, when there's digestive issues, we can have blood sugar variations. And of course, you can get that hangry feeling where you're hungry and then you get angry because you're just so hungry and you don't have enough blood sugar. And some of the things to resolve that is to, you know, have less carbs and more of a good fat diet. It's more the ketogenic diet. I don't think kids should have no carbs at all because I think they're important. But I feel like if we stop the roller coaster of insulin release, low insulin, you know, the blood sugar high, the blood sugar low, the high blood sugar, the low blood sugar, if we even that out more by evening out the sugar and the insulin release, one of the ways to do that is with good fats. And some good fats would be coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, nuts and seeds. I know some kids are allergic, but you know, good meats that are organic, grass-fed. Eggs have the egg yolks have a lot of cholesterol, which is good for brain building. Fish oils are really good. So those are some things that can help more even out blood sugar issues. I think there can be neurotransmitter issues, especially with anxiety. A lot of neurotransmitters are made in our gut, and there are things that can help, certain B vitamins, certain minerals, and it would depend on what the issue is. So I can't give you use this and this will help. It could be a number of things. Same with the anger and tantrum issues. There was a study, I can't remember the guy's name now, sorry, who he looked at men in prison. He looked at people in prison and their tendencies toward anger and what their vitamin deficiencies were. And he found a lot of them were like deficient in B6 and B1 and magnesium and certain minerals. So, you know, what you eat or what you supplement with is certainly a big piece of the picture. I mentioned gut issues, but sometimes anger can come from parasites. And, you know, even if we live in the Western world, there are still parasites around. It's really hard to find them on a fecal test. If you send stool in and a stool sample, it's very rare that they'll find parasites. And there's lots of reasons for that, but basically I don't trust those kinds of tests. You can tell if your child might have parasites by if they eat voraciously, like they're always hungry, if they're picking in the trash or trying to eat other things that are mouthing a lot of objects could be a sign. Disruption in their sleep and behavior around the full moon and around the new moon. So it's good to keep like a full moon calendar. I recommend for everyone to do a food, mood, poop, and sleep journal. So you watch what your child's eating and what's their mood afterwards, or an hour after, 20 minutes to a couple hours afterwards. How are they sleeping? How are they pooping, right? So you can start correlating their diet with all these other things that occur, because it's super important what we take into our gut. But I was talking about parasites, and that's another good thing to track on a monthly basis. You can track behavior based on full moon and new moon. And I have heard from so many parents that their kids, they have bad sleep around the full moon, and they have bad behaviors and sometimes tantrums and anger, sometimes cravings for food. Parasites love dairy, so milk and cheese and those kind of cravings. And the Parasites are more active around the full moon, and sometimes it's the new moon for people. So they'll be more active, and it's a good time to do a parasite cleanse because they'll come to the gut for a feeding. Okay, I wanted to address brain inflammation. One way to check and see if your child has brain inflammation, which I'm pretty sure they mostly all do, is you can do a little trial with ibuprofen. You can give them some ibuprofen and see if they calm down, and then you'll know that there's some inflammation. I was also watching a webinar on PANS and PANDAS, which is pediatric acute neuropsychiatric syndrome, and PANDAS is associated with strep, and PANS is associated with any other infection. And this is where something from let's say the strep microorganism, you produce antibodies to that, and the antibodies cross the blood-brain barrier and they start attacking the brain. So you have this crazy making behavior because areas of the brain are attacked by your own immune system. So I was watching this webinar, and it was by a company that has homeopathic remedies, which I'm really excited to start using. And every single symptom they were talking about with PANS, PANDAS was autism, every single one. And I was just amazed at, I mean, this was specific for PANS and PANDAS, and it was autism. So I'm curious how many of our kids are actually just have this autoimmunity in the brain. And this is what I find consistently on my clients, this autoimmunity. Okay, let's see. I just took some notes, so I'm not going in an exact order. Let's say vocal stims. Someone mentioned in an email, maybe it's self-regulation for sensory processing issues. It can also be a developmental stage your child is stuck in, and their neural network workaround, right? It's their way that they've worked around whatever stage they didn't complete. Of course, we talked about brain inflammation and toxicity and the brain getting stuck due to that. Tantrums, I talked about neurotransmitter imbalance, and also some kids have a lot of frustration, right? If they're unable to communicate or say what they want or need, or they're not understood. Maybe they give you an indication that they want something, but you just misunderstand, because that happens, we're all human, and there's a super high level of frustration. And you know, kids come in with different personalities. Some kids are those more phlegmatic, like if you look at the Rudolf Steiner way, he has these different styles, different types of personalities. Some are just kind of more easygoing, and some are more like agitated, and some are more extroverted, and some are more introverted. So there's also a constitution of the child that can be at play. So it's complicated, you know, it's not just one thing. And that's, I don't want to leave you with that. I mean, there are definitely things that can be done. Okay, let me see if there's any other notes I wanted to say. I think I said all my notes and all my little pieces. So I'm going to start answering questions. And I saw something in the chat. Okay. Thank you, Marta. Bernard Rimlin. I forgot what I was saying at the time. There's another person. He might have, it was when I was talking about the person who studied people in prison and their neurotransmitter, their personalities or their tendencies toward anger and violence, and how they had deficiencies in minerals. Bernard Rimlin, he was one of the, you know, early founders of looking into the biochemistry and why kids had autism. He was brilliant. And there was another guy who might have been working with him. It was somewhere in Illinois. I can see the slides in my head. I just can't see his name. Okay, Pooja says, my kid is 9 years old and is very afraid of the dark and has anxiety. So what I would say to this is, again, the toxicity issue. What I find again and again is kids with anxiety, when we start taking the toxins out and we open their drainage and start taking the toxins out, you see this really go down, and they're better able to focus and attend and not as afraid. Also, for you, it could be that, you know, there's certain neurochemistry happening. So there could be calming types of vitamins and neurotransmitters we could use with your child. And that could be GABA, that's GABA aminobutyric acid. And I recommend pharma GABA, which is produced in a certain way that's supposed to be more effective. So the pharma GABA, you can get from, I think I like Natural Factors because they have a chewable tablet. And it calms the brain. It's a calming neurotransmitter. But there are other formulas, like for sleep. There's one called theanine serine, theanine, theanine serine, and that's a that's an amino acid that feeds into the neurotransmitters of the brain. And it's a formula. It has maybe some adaptogenic herbs, I think, and has maybe some vitamin B6 is very calming. Fish oil is very calming to the brain. When I say calming, I mean calming to the brain. Magnesium is very calming. So I noticed someone had done Epsom salt baths before bed. That's always a good thing to get more magnesium in through transdermally through the skin. From Sharon, Adriana 21 and Noah 23 are listening. Both are non-speaking but use facilitated communication. They love to answer questions. I had someone in my summit, I'm blanking on her name, who did facilitated communication, and she was amazing. So that's awesome. I don't know, Sharon, if you've tried vitamin B12 injections or, there's things that can be done for speech. It's kind of a slow processing thing in the brain, and only so much can get through a certain area. But there could be other areas of dysfunction in the brain. What is the name of the Pandas homeopathic company? They only work through practitioners, and it's Desbio, Desbio. And they have, oh my gosh, they have really amazing homeopathics that I'm learning about, and that I'm going to start using with my clients. So if you wanted to present that to your home practitioner, whoever you work with, or work with me, we can do things on that. I don't have any data on how they work, but I had a consult with someone from the company, and she was telling me about all these things. And also another reference on homeopathics is Michelle Perro, Perro. She wrote the book Why Are Our Kids Sick? Something like that. So you can look up Michelle Perro, and she's a brilliant homeopath. I don't know if she's seeing clients, but she knows like every function of every compound in every homeopathic. So it seems. I mean, I might be exaggerating a little. Okay, what I am going to do now is, hang on a sec. I have another screen, so if you see me looking away, that's why. Okay, I wanted to start answering some of the questions that I got on email. Okay, dear Luminara, this is from Mona. Thank you very much for your great efforts to help autistic children and their parents. The biggest problem for my son is going to hospitals. I always find difficulty in taking him to the hospitals and allowing the doctors to get close to him, especially dentists. He cries a lot and even refuses to get into the clinic or the hospital. So maybe other people can relate to this. There's something called white coat syndrome. I don't know if you guys know about this. I had a client who said, I have white coat syndrome. And it's that anytime you get around a doctor or dentist, someone in a white coat, there's this fear, this anxiety that pops up because maybe you don't know what's going to happen. So that's a very real thing. And I would say, so it's probably a real thing for this child. I don't know how old he is. And probably because he's had some past trauma around seeing someone who had a white coat, maybe it's a needle for a blood draw, maybe it's a vaccine, maybe it's, any reason. Maybe he got his teeth worked on and it was painful, and now in his brain, it's going to be pain. So there's techniques that you can use. There's emotional freedom technique, EFT, and also called tapping. And what EFT is, or this tapping, is you just tap on a series of meridian points. So starting at the head and the forehead, and then I think maybe under the eye and the chin. So you tap on all these areas of the body. And while you're tapping, like the first time you tap on the head, you say, even though I'm afraid of doctors and dentists, I deeply and I completely love and accept myself. And you can do this for your child, and you just do lots of rounds of that. So you can find a practitioner who does that, or you can find some information online. There's tons and tons of information. So it sounds like a PTSD thing also. So it's more complicated than just anxiety, but it could be, you know, obviously there's anxiety. There's different calming things, like what I like to do, you know, there's all the neurotransmitter stuff I mentioned earlier, the GABA, the fish oil, those kinds of things. And I like to do like an energy sweep. So I'll go from head to toe on the body and just kind of clear. And you have to have the intention, like you have to pay attention while you're doing it and have the intention to clear out the past trauma, clear out the anxiety. So that's one method I like to use. And then there's a book called The Emotion Code, and it's by Dr. Bradley Nelson, and he does online trainings. And it's about clearing emotions, and there could be past life stuff, you know, there could be ancestral stuff, things that we're carrying from the grandparents, the great grandparents. If there was a parent in a war, a grandparent, someone in the lineage who was in a war, that can be an issue. So these are all areas to check out. I can't tell you exactly what it is at the moment, but because I don't have more information. And also what I would do is I would ask the body questions. So when I do neuromodulation technique, I use muscle testing, and I can pose any question to the body as long as it's in a yes, no, so I can get, you know, a strong response or a weak response when I'm pushing on a muscle. And when I have my clients at a distance, what I do is I use myself as the surrogate for that person. And I muscle test on myself. So I have a way of connecting with them. And then I just use my fingers like this. So my top finger is pushing down my bottom finger, which is giving resistance. So just like this. So I'm able to get answers. And we just ask the body a series of questions. And then we find, oh, there's, I don't know, I'm making it up, but we find, oh, there's fear in kidneys, in the kidneys, and let's clear that out. So when we can see something, then we can clear it and move it out of the body. Okay, so Jill says, my son is very into movies and watches movie clips constantly. He repeats different lines from movies and fixates on it a large percentage of the time. He also does a lot of stimming. What would be the best thing to help him to get out of that constant looping of thoughts? He's 10 years old. Thanks for adding the age, that's helpful. I think there needs to be some development there. Like, it sounds like he's really stuck. And I mean, work with your practitioner. There might be some supplements that can help with brain stuff, but for me, I think there's probably some inflammation toxicity. You can do a trial of, you know, do some ibuprofen, see if that shifts the scene at all, if he does less of that. And then if that'll just tell you, oh, there's definitely inflammation and we need to work on this. I think it's not going to be an instant take this pill and this will change. I think you have to work on that. And I think it's really opening up his drainage and getting the toxins out and getting that inflammation calm. Sharon, you put a Facebook link. I'm not gonna look at that. Oh, Colette has worked with Noah and Adrienne. Okay, great. I'm just gonna go to another question. This is from Rachel. My question is, my 8-year-old daughter wakes up some mornings angry, then she proceeds to wreak havoc, furious with everything and everyone and tantruming until she wakes up properly in half an hour, and then she's happy as anything. It is exhausting for us and an awful way to start the day. I am 5 years into this, and we have come such a long way, but I'm finding it hard to deal with this rage and sometimes violence. So Rachel, this is where I thought of blood sugar, and she's still half asleep, it sounds like. So there's a curiosity here. So one, I'm wondering if she just has this super low blood sugar in the morning before she wakes up. And I don't know what you've tried. So it's hard for me to give some really specific guidance because there could be a homeopathic that would work for her. There could be some nutrients, some supplements, but it sounds like what's happening is she's not fully awake, and it could be some night terrors, like some morning dreams. It's anger versus fear, so I'm less inclined to think that, but I do have a client who's wakes up with terrors, and there's a lot of fear there. So maybe something's going on in her brain as she's waking up. Because I don't know more, there's not any more information there. I'm wondering if, like, is she out of bed when she's tantruming? Is she still in bed? So there's a lot of questions I would have to really kind of decode this. And I mean, I'm so sorry. I get that it's super frustrating and takes a lot of energy, and that you want to start your day differently. And I don't know what you've done behaviorally. So without more information, it's kind of hard for me to say something, but I would probably recommend work with someone to give a homeopathic around that, and work with a practitioner who can help you with nutrients, maybe a nutritionist. It sounds really like a blood sugar and a not fully awake thing. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Sharon. So Colette, the tap-in girl, has worked with Noah and Adriana for energy and vibration. Oh, energy and vibration waking up. I'm not sure what you mean. Okay, I'm not following. Sorry. I'm going to go into another question. So this is from Judy. When a meltdown starts as a temper tantrum to get something the child wants, but it devolves into a full-on meltdown, what can parents do? Often we give out of desperation to get him out of the cycle. So the parents give in. So that can be a pattern that's forming, that he knows you're going to give in, so he persists. But, a lot of kids, once they're in their meltdown, they're kind of not in their right mind. They aren't consciously doing something purposefully, if you know what I mean. So I'll give an example. When my son was around 9 or 10, he had this full-on tantrum. I have no idea. I can't remember what it was for, but something seemingly small. And he just would flail his body, and he would hit me and bite me, and because I was close to him and trying to calm him down. And afterwards, when he kind of came out of it, I said, I started talking to him about the behavior, and I said, and it's not okay to bite me. He's like, I didn't bite you. And it was something clicked on in that moment, that he didn't remember anything that was happening while he was tantruming. He was in such a state that he didn't remember afterwards. So I'm just saying, during these big meltdown tantrums, and if you're not Judy and you're listening, and maybe your child does this, it can be that there's just this going into a different place in the mind, not in our conscious mind, more in our reptilian brain. Okay, so I'm just going to finish reading the email. With our grandson, the meltdown renders him speechless, literally. It goes on for more than an hour and includes stim behaviors, extreme sensitivity, and obsessive concerns about things not related to the initial issue. Our therapist suggested we call behavior line to bring someone in to get help. But when presenting this option to our grandson, he became more hysterical because he is afraid he will be shot by the police. He's 13 and nonviolent, just miserable and lonely. I had a thought about this. Let me go back and read. So this is where I was thinking maybe blood sugar, maybe some of those, what I talked about earlier, the magnesium, B1, B6, fish oil, some of the calming things, and also drainage and detox, to help get things out of the body. And he's probably in a cycle or pattern now, so there could be some emotional release, some trauma release. The whole thing about being afraid he'll be shot by the police if someone else comes in, like I would dig into that. You could do some EFT, some tapping around that. He must have picked that up somewhere in a movie, in something. So I would kind of go down the rabbit hole on that one and try to dismantle that one through some emotional or energy work. And about the full-on meltdown, I think what I would try, there's an amazing woman. I'm just going to give you guys another resource. And I'll send out an email because she's having a new program, a new entry into her program coming up. She just emailed me this morning. She was in my last summit. Her name is Samantha Moe, M-O-E. And she has mad to glad. It's mad, the number 2 glad. And she has like parent trainings on how to handle these kinds of behaviors. And so I think that might be really interesting for you, Judy, and maybe some other people to check that out. I can't remember all the ways she has, but I really found her extremely helpful. And I wanted to say something else about that. Oh, right. So talking to this 13-year-old Judy, your grandson, in a time when there's total calm, right? This isn't happening and it hasn't just happened. So you pick a time that you start talking to him about it and investigating and asking, you know, just asking questions like about why he feels so adamant that he wants this thing, you know, to ask him cognitively if he can understand why this is going on for him. And he might come up with some really interesting answers for you, but you have to do it in a time when he's calm and able to be cognitive. So those are some of the things I would suggest. Okay. Okay, so Sharon was giving some help. SharonsWeb.com, lots of connection. We have 3 adult children, nonprofit Autism Foundation, Healing with Vibration seminar. Okay, Muna, I have a problem with my microphone. Can we get video recording later? Yes. I've been trying to fix it since the beginning of the meeting with no success. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to type your question into the chat? Okay, Jill, I have an older son, 17, who presents as having OCD, anxiety, ODD. He also is very into the environment, and this has caused him to start having hoarding tendencies. I'm not sure what you mean by very into the environment, like he's environmentally conscious and wants to save the environment, or he's into the environment he's in. I need some clarity there. Has caused hoarding tendencies. COVID has caused things to get even worse. He has had several unusual symptoms in the past. He had facial paralysis on one side, and our naturopath thought it could be Epstein-Barr infection. He also has tics. He can also have anger issues at times if he perceives everything is going wrong in the world. Do you think that the GABA supplement could help? I think the GABA supplement would be a little bit of a Band-Aid at this point. I think having, you know, getting junk in his body that is in his body that doesn't belong, the toxins, getting that out would be helpful. Okay, he's into the environment when it comes to recycling. Everything wants to have zero waste. Well, I think he's a pretty brilliant young man who is conscious of what's going on in the world. So that's really awesome. But if we get so stuck on something like the OCD-ness, that can be an issue. So, you know, I'm tending to think brain inflammation, and you might want to get checked for PANS-PANDAS. You might find that ibuprofen trick, you know, helpful. Maybe have them on a low dose or some dose of ibuprofen and check out if those behaviors change. I'm trying to think of other things. I really suspect inflammation in the brain with the OCD and anxiety and the ODD. Probably needs some. Okay, almost all of our kids could use the emotional work, the tapping, the emotion code. I always do emotional work when I do neuromodulation every time. I mean, it's so important. And again, Jill, there could be some, you know, nutrient balances for the neurotransmitters. So work with your nutritionist or whoever your doctor is. And I would suggest that. Brenda, my son is 7 years old and we are doing potty training for the past year and a half. He is very aware of when he needs to go, but a lot of times he is not initiating and his success rate is inconsistent. We are not sure if he is seeking attention or if something else is going on. Is there any supplement we can try? Well, I'm curious if he's verbal and can tell you stuff. It could be a sensory processing issue, right? He can not be feeling it. He's verbal. Okay. So I would do some, you know, cognitive stuff. Like I would ask him, you know, when he's not successful, right? if he's this inconsistency, if he's not successful, you could ask, did you feel it coming? I know some kids are too busy playing, they just don't want to go. I had a friend who had a daughter like that. She was just too busy. I don't think that's the case with him. I'm just saying there can be other reasons. So I would talk to him about it. And again, you talk to him about it at a time when he's had food in his belly. He's, kind of feeling a little bit stable, like that easy going kind of state. And you can talk, and you can also say, oh, we missed this time, and not without shaming, right? Oh, we missed this time. Did you feel that coming? Oh, okay. Well, if you felt it coming, what can we do? Is there you can ask him, is there something that we could do when you feel it coming? You want to give me a signal? Or, you can actually talk about it with him. So those are some of the things I would try. Is there a supplement? What I would do is, if I was working with you one-on-one, I would investigate that drainage funnel and see how the liver is, because it might be dumping into the kidney. Well, I don't know if it's poop or pee that he's inconsistent with. So that's one thing I would think of, if it's frequent urination. Another thing I would think of is there might be some homeopathic remedies. So I would work with a homeopath or your nutritionist or someone, or your naturopath, who I'm not sure who you work with. And there could be, so is it poop or pee, Brenda? Both. Okay. Okay. I'm guessing it might be a sensory thing. And what I would do with neuromodulation is, look at all the sensory motor things. So what I mean by sensory is, any sensation that comes from the body to the brain, and then the brain has to process. So first of all, there's the pathway it comes up. And then second of all, there's the processing of that and making meaning of it. And then the motor part is where an instruction comes from the brain and goes to the rest of the body, let's say the bladder, and says, okay, hold the sphincter closed until I get to the bathroom. Or maybe that signal is messed up too. So I don't have enough information to tell. Supplements. Nothing's coming to mind as far as a particular supplement. A lot of things we just can't take a pill to resolve. Unfortunately, that's the way our Western medical model has got us to think. But if we think in a more holistic perspective, what else might be going on? And is there a cognitive, is there something else in his attention that he's not attending to this? Is there a sensory motor thing? Like I would open that up to bigger questions. I don't think there's a take this pill and it'll be resolved. I really don't. I'm sorry, I know you don't want to hear that. Okay, Jill says her son isn't open to EFT. I can do it for him. Yeah, you can. You can be a surrogate and do it for him. I think it works better on the, person directly. Yeah, he's a teenager. He's resistant and defiant. And again, I would find a time when he's not. There are some sweet times with our kids. So even when my son was so full of tantrums, and I was there doing, always with him until I got totally tired of it. And I would say, you know what? Because I will always feel like kids should have their feelings. And otherwise it gets stuffed in and it'll affect something in our body later. So I would always be with him, even when he was tantruming and being like, it's okay, you're safe, you're fine, just let it out. And after a while, it got overwhelming. And I said, you know what? You can have your feelings. I'm all for that. But I want you to go to your room and have your feelings. This is when he was older, 9, 10. I said, I want you to go to your room and have your feelings. And when you're done, come out, but I don't have the attention right now for you. So I'm asking you to go, go punch the bed, jump on the bed, hit the bed, hit the pillows, have your feelings, and then come afterwards. And typically he would break a toy, and then he'd come out later when he was done and he would go, Mama, I broke my car or whatever. And I'd say, well, Yeah, you did. Sometimes that happens when you get really angry and upset. Do you want to fix it? Or, you know, and then we deal with that problem. But he would be out of the tantrum. So anyway, I digress. Okay, Jill, we've also had him tested for strep, but it was negative. Are there other tests to see if the child has pandas? There are other tests, and I was looking at that on the webinar, and I can't remember what they are. There is there's something called the Cunningham panel. A researcher called Jill Cunningham figured out pandas, and there's like a panel of tests you can do to check for the antibodies, and you'd have to ask your doctor for the Cunningham panel. Okay, I'm going to go on to another question. Keisha, I would love to hear more about vocal stimming causes, how to reduce. I've ruled out excitement because it happens constantly. It's not inflammation because we've trialed some supplements. I've heard maybe too much glutamine or yeast, but I'm at a loss. Please help. Okay, Keisha, I have kind of addressed this already in a way. I would do drainage and detox, and I would second guess if it's inflammation or not, and also stuck in a certain developmental stage, or stuck in this might be your child's way of reducing stress, like he or she has found a brilliant workaround for self-calming or something like that. But I would probably look at too much glutamine. It could be because that's a stimulant in the brain. So you could try GABA if you suspect that. Yeast, yeah, there could be a lot of toxins in there. So I think what I don't want to do is isolate it to one thing or the other. I want to take a more holistic approach. And I would say for you, Keisha, I would really look more at the whole body and at the drainage and what other things can be in there. And I'm not sure there's a magic pill. I think it's a process. All right. Kelly says, not you, Kelly, on the video. I see you there. Hi, my 9-year-old often picks himself when stressed. First, it was his nails, and now it's his body. Any scratch might not heal for months as he will constantly pick it. I know he only does this when stressed. I've tried everything, but as soon as he's alone, even in the bathroom, he'll pick until he bleeds. Any thoughts would really help. My son is also unable to sleep alone. Okay. I'm going to finish reading the whole thing, then I'll pick it apart. He's unable to sleep alone. We have to lay in bed for up to an hour. He seems to have specific rituals before sleeping, but gets so deeply scared. Then we have to sleep with him, and he wakes to check he's not alone. I have increased protein before bedtime, I assume is what you mean. And his diet is extremely good with very little sugar. He gets daily exercise and controlled screen time. Good for you, Kelly. That's awesome. I'm in the UK. I'm finding it hard to buy him a supplement to help calm his high alert and anxiety. He now has a daily magnesium bath prior to bed, constantly needs cuddles and reassurance still all day and all evening. He's been home educated for 4 years due to this, and after 4 years, he can now attend a short class without me. We are desperate to support our son to become a confident and self-assured young man, and so concerned that we still at 9 are sleeping with him, and he shows such emotions and anxiety daily. So he could be one of these kids who this is like a little bit of underlying personality. Can you guide me to anyone at all that could help us in the UK? Ruben has been transferred to Chums again for therapy. I'm assuming that's some kind of behavioral therapy, but I feel that only goes so far and he needs more example supplements. Since introducing your book and diet, I've seen slight improvement, but we're now so desperate to just be able to sleep in our own beds and not have them constantly anxious. So first of all, I just want to clarify, I didn't write a book, and maybe you're confusing me with someone else, and that's okay. So awesome that you followed this and did the diet and you've seen some results. Again, I would think GABA before bedtime. I would think GABA and some of the more calming nutrients if you haven't tried those, which I talked about earlier. And I would think of the picking sounds a little bit OCD, kind of tick stim behavior. And again, I would suspect inflammation, and I would think open up drainage and detox because there's something deeper going on. And I don't think there's a magic pill again, but I think that some of those calming supplements could help. So I would work with your practitioner. I don't know anyone. I do Kirsty, can't remember her last name. I want to say Kirstie Alley, but that's the person who was in the Cheers I am gonna see if I have an email from her so I could give you her name. She's in the UK. She works with kids on the spectrum. She also does a lot of emotional work with kids. So let's see. Christy Terry. And I think she's called, her business is called Equilibrium Health, something like that. So maybe you can try her. All right. Oh, Dr. Klinghardt is in London and can help. That's a possibility. Yeah. That's great. Thank you, AM, whoever you are. What was the Moms to Anger program again? Jill is asking. So I'm going to put it to everybody. It's called, I think it's mad2glad.com, but I'm just going to write mad2glad. It's a parent training. When I interviewed Samantha, she just had these really great stories and this great process on how to defuse kids. She was awesome. All right, next question is from Andrea. Since my son was 2 years old, he has run back and forth, making utterances when he seemed excited or overwhelmed. At age 5, he was diagnosed with PDD-NOS, but very high functioning. So that's pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, which is no longer in the diagnostic criteria. They don't use that anymore. He is 17 now and still continues to run or pace back and forth. I've been told it's a form of regulation. Excuse me. Or has to do with sensory integration, processing disorder, or is simply stimming. He replays things over and over in his head, gets overexcited and anxious, and needs the repetitive movement in order to regulate. However, when he is sick with a fever, this stimming disappears. This is truly stimming. And why does it disappear when he has a fever? So notice that when your kids have a fever, they're kind of low energy and other things happen. I've heard this before. Kids who are chronically sick, then they or chronically have something, and then they have a fever, and all that disappears. I think what happens when we have a fever is a whole different set of what's called heat shock proteins. So the fever causes other things to happen in the body. So what it's actually doing is maybe calming a certain immune response and charging up a different immune response to deal with that acute thing that's present. So that to me tells me that the immune system is putting all its resources on this acute virus or whatever causes the fever, and it's ignoring all the other stuff it normally attacks. So to me, it sounds like autoimmune inflammation. It sounds like inflammation in the brain, and I would again check for pandas. But and it's true, he probably is regulating. I've heard from people with autism who say, I have this anxiety or I have this overwhelm out in public, and they know themselves, and they come home and then they'll flap or stim because that's a way of regulating themselves or kind of letting go of the energy. So there's energy techniques, again, that body sweeping of just going down from the top to the bottom. Usually the person is laying down and you just sweep, and with the intention of getting rid of all that extra stuck energy. Acupuncture could be really helpful to help modify that energy in the body, the energy flow, and also probably some cognitive things of how to, it sounds like he's kind of regulating himself, but again, you can have a discussion with him, and I would look at the autoimmune pandas, possibly some homeopathics and drainage and detox. Andrea. Okay, Elizabeth asks, my question is about my 15-year-old son who has a lot of anxiety at school, specifically during math when he does not understand the concepts that are being taught. He will shut down and leave the classroom until he can calm down. He's a freshman in high school. This has been going on since 5th grade. He does well in other classes where he understands the material. Do you have any suggestions on what can help him during these episodes or even before he shuts down? So it sounds like this is a particular subject, and maybe someone else has, a child who has this with another subject in school or another particular thing. This reminds me of also the white coat syndrome, right? The doctors, being afraid of the doctors. So what can help with that? I mean, he obviously knows himself and he'll leave the room, but there seems to be some trauma or maybe potentially PTSD around this. So the tapping, the energy work, emotional work, also in the moment, There are a few things that anyone can do to help with anxiety, but you have to really be cognitively prepared for it, right? So maybe it happened, maybe when he goes into the math class, this is what he does. So there's a type of breathing, it's called 4-6 breathing. And what it does is it brings the parasympathetic nervous system into dominance. And what that means is instead of being in fight or flight, you go into a relaxed rest and digest. So the way you do this breathing, and y'all can do it with me now if you want, I'm going to describe it, then I'll do it. So you inhale 4 counts and hold for a beat, and then you exhale 6 counts and hold for a beat. And you do that at least 3 times. So you, I'll just do it once. So inhale on 4 counts, hold, and exhale on 6 counts. And then you just repeat that. So I'll do that sometimes when I'm having a hard time falling asleep, and it usually puts me right out. So that's something also you can do to help with sleep and anxiety at sleep time. I forgot to mention that earlier to whoever had the sleep issue. Another thing that he could do, and it depends if this is acceptable in the classroom, but when we put pressure here on the third eye chakra, this is the 6th chakra, also right, between the eyebrows, a little above, when you put pressure there, that also calms that brings the parasympathetic nervous system into dominance, so calms the body. So he could simply put his head on the desk, put his knuckles, his hands over his head and put his head on the desk. So I do that a lot in my yoga class. There's a pose called child's pose, and it's where you're kneeling down and then you put your body forward and your head on the ground, and it's super calming. So those are just a couple ways to bring, the rest and digest into dominance. He could have GABA. That could be a possible thing that would help him during that class. He can take a GABA tablet before class. You can try those things. Just wondering if you have heard of any success with the use of chiropractic care with autistic children. Marcel is asking. Absolutely. So what happens in chiropractic, and even myself, I go into the chiropractor and sometimes I'm feeling like really tired and low energy. And then he'll adjust me, like correct all the spinal subluxations, they're called. So when the spine's crooked, and instantly I feel like, oh my God, I have more energy. I want to go back and work now. Whereas before I was dragging. So just realigning that spine allows the energy to flow and the cerebral spinal fluid to flow and the cranial sacral rhythm to flow. So yes, that can be awesome. That's another thing I forget to mention a lot, but I see chiropractic care as continual, like you want to keep going, Okay, Elizabeth, we just answered that. Okay, how many more do we have? We have 2 more questions and then we'll be done. Okay, this is from Amanjot. Let's see, can't make it. So this is the daughter who's 4 years old, has no speech yet. She has been diagnosed with autism. Firstly, she throws a lot of tantrums while eating anything. She won't eat any food and keeps on crying the whole day. She used to eat all types of food till the age of 2 years. After that, she started getting picky, and now she is super picky and declines all the meals. It's becoming really hard to feed her as she throws a lot of tantrums. She just keeps on whining and gets irritated the whole day. And since she has no speech and is not really able to communicate her needs, it becomes hard for us to understand what she wants. So the first thing I would say is what happened at age 2, right? Because she was eating, and this is for anybody who suddenly has a shift with their child. Did she have a strep infection? Did she have some other infection? Did something happen with her gut? My suspicion is she got a gut bug. She got something in her digestive tract. Could be a parasite, could be something else. So what happened at age 2? You can do some emotional EFT type work to go back to that emotion code. But also it sounds like the food irritates her in some way, any food. So I would be curious to ask, what are you doing for her gut? Does she have probiotics? I would look at gut stuff, work with your practitioner on that. And then probably she gets even more frustrated because she can't communicate. Like your problem, maybe you want her to eat and she feels like really crappy. it really hurts maybe, and she's frustrated that you keep giving her food. I mean, it's a possibility. I'm not sure if that's going on because I'm not actually there. So he goes on in the email. Secondly, sometimes suddenly she will start crying and then is unable to put a stop on it. We have to try different things to make her feel lighter and cheer her up, but she will smile for a few seconds and will start crying again. She takes a long time to come back to normal as she fails to understand how to have control over her emotions. So she just gets a hold of the other person and scratches the other person. It becomes hard for us to understand why she's so upset or why she is reacting in such a way. We would request give us some tips on how to understand or have more control over her emotions so she can calm herself independently without our help. So first of all, developmentally, she may be less than 4 years old in the emotional department. So keep that in mind, right? She might be more like a 2-year-old. I don't know. But bear in mind that some of these kids are developmentally like way advanced in some areas because of that uneven brain development, and developmentally sometimes really a lot younger than their actual age. So again, I would work with a practitioner to do some drainage and detox and really work on her digestive tract. And I have a feeling when she's crying for no reason, she's either in pain somewhere, something in her head hurts. So if you can ask her to point to where it hurts, you know, to try to understand by having her point, or you know, I see that you want her to feel lighter and distract her, but there's something going on. There's something deeper going on. And I think she's in pain somewhere. And I would really work with the gut. And one of the questions I'd have for you, Aman, is does she lean against the furniture? Does she lean against the side of the couch and on her belly? Does she poke on her belly at all? So that would be another indication. So if I were to work with you, we would do some investigation into what's causing that, and whether it's a set of toxins, whether it's something in the gut, whether it's a particular pain somewhere, and I would start addressing it from there. So work with somebody, because that's a little bit, it sounds like she has some kind of infection or something. I'm going to do this one last question that I received by email from Alfredina. My daughter makes a lot of tantrums. Are they meant as a stage to speak functional communication? Other questions as do with take everything to her mouth. So she puts everything in her mouth is on what I'm reading. And she does movements that remind me of a blowjob. Okay, so that's interesting. Thanks, Alfredina, for the question. You know, for you, I would just suspect parasites, and I would work on her gut, and I would work with a practitioner. You're welcome to work with me. I don't know where you're from. I work with clients all over the world, but we would find out what's going on and then start probably opening up her drainage, but also we might start, you know, scrubbing her gut out and working in that way. Okay. Virginia, my grandson has dilated pupils. When we're inside, they're big. When we go outside, they're normal. He has a real hard time when looking at the sun. It used to be his pupils would get big when he is eating. This is a sign of probably adrenal dysregulation, like that he's in stress mode usually. That's what I would say. Has a hard time looking at the sun. He's probably pretty sensitive. So I would look at hormonal stuff for him. I would look at drainage and detox. It's a bigger issue than just the pupils dilated. I think there's a lot deeper stuff going on, and I would look at that systemically. Leona, please can I say something about how we can help with photon wave? You have heard it from Debbie. I'm not sure we're going to have time to get to that today because we're already a little delayed. Jill, what would you say as a statement during an EFT session to help a teen with OCD, ODD, and anxiety during this difficult time because of all COVID? So I would find I'm not an EFT expert by any means, but I've done some of it. And what I would do is you could probably search online for statements, but the statements would look like, you could probably just, you know, Google EFT statements for OCD, EFT statements for oppositional defiance behavior, EFT statements for anxiety. But I would probably set up something like whatever his particular fear is, right? Even I'm making this up, like what his fear might be, but even though I'm afraid the environment is going to hell, or even though I'm afraid the environment is ruined, even though I'm afraid I'm contributing to the environmental demise, even though I'm afraid, I have to look at what you said earlier, but even though I have fear of this, or even though I have to make sure the light is turned off 10 times, even though I have to wash my hands 30 times, even, you know, whatever the OCD behavior is, I deeply and completely accept myself. So that's always the statement. Even though I have this, I deeply and completely accept myself. So that's kind of the setup. And then you tap through that. You might need to do that several times. And one way to find out if your statements are working is you take your child's level, and if you're not doing this with him, it might be hard to do, you know, if you're doing it on yourself, but you can maybe visualize the level of OCD on a scale of 1 to 10. Is it a 10 out of 10? And so when I've done EFT with people years and years ago, I would ask them, what's your feeling of fear right now on 1 to 10? They'd say, you know, 8. And then you tap and go through the process, and then you'd ask, what's your feeling of fear right now? Oh, it's a 2 out of 10. So that's one way to see what's working. But you could probably Google and find statements on that. And I'm again, not an EFT expert, but those are some, you know, places to start. M says, you probably already mentioned this, but I am seeing responses with LDN as far as helping with tantrums, and believe it or not, potty training. LDN is low dose naltrexone that you have to get prescribed from a doctor. I'm not a doctor, so I don't prescribe, and that's absolutely amazing. That helps with inflammation. It's similar to what I mentioned, the ibuprofen. So yeah, you guys could work with your doctor to get low dose naltrexone for inflammation. That's a little bit, you know, it's a medication, and you're controlling the immune system. When I feel, my personal opinion is, let's control the immune system from the inside out and stop it from doing that behavior in the first place. So that would be my preference, but that's a good, like, kind of Band-Aid solution, temporary solution. Okay, great. Thanks for your comments and responses, everyone. I'm sorry, who was it? Leona, we're not going to get to the photon wave, but I'll check that out. And thank you everyone for attending. We ran a little late. I was intending to keep this an hour, but just keep on my email list. Make sure you whitelist. What that means, whitelist my emails. What that means is make sure you approve from Gmail or Yahoo or whoever that you're okay to receive my emails, because I'll have announcements for Samantha Mo's Magic Lad coming up. I'll have announcements for my drainage and detox program, and I have lots of other announcements. I really just want to get information out for anything to help people. Let's see. Okay, so thanks everyone. We're going to end right now, and Leona, yeah, just send me the information. Okay, bye everyone.